Welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott D.
And I'm Matt F.
I don't know where to go from there.
Well, I just one more podcast and we'll meet quota and we'll get the finger traps, which are really a very metaphorical incentive if you think about it.
I'm really going for the waffle party, man. That thing sounds real cool.
I don't really understand I don't know what sounds so good about a waffle party to you. It's just there's some waffles.
Yeah, man. It's just the waffles. Oh my gosh, Matt, I'm back. I'm back from my week off. Before we get started today, I just wanted to say thank you, and especially thanks to your brother Daniel for stepping in for me. You guys talked about Extraction 2 last week, and I got to listen to the episode because I had also watched that movie, and I really liked it. It was a good episode. I got to nod along and agree with you on most of the things you said, so it wasn't like listening to your stupid Justice League episode.
I know, we couldn't find anything to talk about that would infuriate you, so we had to fall back to the sorts of things that he and I share in common sort of the most, which is violent action films and our love for them.
It's always fun to get to listen to this podcast as a listener, which I very rarely get to do.
I understand. I know what you mean.
But anyway, this week on the show, Matt finally got around to watching one of my favorite TV shows from last year, the 9-part Apple TV Plus series Severance. So we are finally going to talk about the series. I think we made an agreement a year ago, Matt, that you would watch Severance and I would watch Raised by Wolves. And so you have held up your side of the agreement. I have not, but it's just the darndest thing, Matt. They took it off the streaming service.
Oh, I see.
So
you were behind it all.
It's not that I didn't want to watch it. It's just that it's not there anymore.
Yeah. No, I know, man. Totally. I feel so bad for you that you don't get to watch Raised by Wolves now.
But I'll figure out a way, Matt. I'll do something. I'll figure out something. But today we're talking about Severance. We're going to talk about all 9 episodes of the first season of the show. It will be a full spoilers discussion. I don't know how to talk about the show without spoiling it. It's one of those that I just don't think you can. So we'll be spoiling it from the get-go. And I think we have a lot of interesting things to say about the show. I'm looking forward to talking about it a whole bunch.
Me too. You almost can't even accurately pitch the show without spoiling it.
True. I think the pitch I gave you of the show kind of scared you away from it for a long time, actually.
Well, I think I had 2 or 3 different people pitch it to me, and it's like, and I understand the problem now that I'm on the other side, because it's like, do you pitch it as sort of a comedy, which it kind of is, or as a mystery box thriller, which it kind of is, or as a science fiction show, which it kind of is, and it's like, yeah, it is actually all those things. But if you describe it that way, you're like, that sounds like it doesn't know what it is. And I'm like, no, actually, it has a very distinct voice. It knows exactly what it is. So it's hard to explain succinctly. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we will try to do our best while spoiling it completely. Kind of cheating. And then, Matt, after we do that, it's been a few months since we've discussed the film industry. And well, in those intervening weeks, it's not going great for Hollywood, Matt. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about summer 2023, which is, I don't think, shaping up financially the way the film industry was hoping it would at all.
Well, that's fascinating. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into our main topic first, though. Let's talk all about Severance. Matt, what is this television show all about?
Mark leads a team of office workers whose memories have been surgically divided between their work and personal lives. When a mysterious colleague appears outside of work, it begins a journey to discover the truth about their jobs. I think GPT would have done a better job, but okay.
This show was created by Dan Erickson and Ben Stiller. It stars Adam Scott, Zach Cherry, Britt Lower, John Turturro, Patricia Arquette, and I guess we'll call it a guest starring appearance by Christopher Walken. He's in quite a few episodes, but
yeah,
feels weird saying he stars in the show.
He doesn't show up till the latter half, I guess I'd say, but
sure,
he certainly does show up a lot. Yeah.
So I agree with you that summary we just read did not do a very good job of actually depicting what this show is. I'm wondering if you if you had to come up with a succinct couple sentence way of summarizing what Severance is, what the heck would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to know who I was pitching it to, which is something I've come to see as more and more important in recent years. And I would lean, if I were pitching it to me, I would focus on the science fiction. I
Mm-hmm.
would say this is a very cool, fun, thoughtful exploration of the impact of memory, or of the theme of memory on who a person is, through the science fiction conceit of saying that you have these people and their lives have been severed into their work selves and their outside of work selves, and just exploring these ideas through a variety of interesting characters, interesting, unique characters,
Mm-hmm.
and excellent stories and drama, and really awesome TV moments. Like, it's just really good TV on top of all that, right? Like, it's just like
It so is.
the way the episodes are structured. You're like, oh, it's just it always gets me. It's great.
Yeah, you're so right, and I know you kind of not exactly binged this. I think in my second viewing to get it done this week before we met, I definitely binged it the second time around. But it was released week to week. That's how Apple TV does it. I think they do the first two episodes at once, and then they release episode by episode, week to week after that. And I think it is definitely one of those shows that benefited from that kind of release schedule, because you do have like a break in time in between each episode. The cliffhangers come, or the game changers, as we like to call them, when their stuff like is employed in this show, come and leave you kind of wanting more, but having to sit back and digest what you just witnessed, and build excitement towards seeing what the next episode is.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I loved this show so much. I had not revisited it since I watched it last year, and getting to do so in preparation to talk with you, like, just cemented my love for it. It's so good. Like, this is like, it's one of those things that I think is just hitting on every frequency it's operating on. Like, I love it as a science fiction mystery box type show. I love it as just a character study of all these different characters. I love it as just this metaphor for what it feels like to work in an office. Like, the conceit here is so horrifying, but so infinitely relatable, because I definitely had moments in my life, especially earlier in my career, when I was working busy season hours at the company I started at, where I really did feel like my entire life was at the office. And I remember distinctly feeling like getting on an elevator to go back up to the floor I was working on, and feeling like I just left. I
Hmm.
just got off this elevator to go home, and now I'm back again. And it takes that concept, that idea, and literalizes it, where these people never go home, that they
Yeah.
literally get on the elevator to leave at the end of the day, and the next thing they experience instantaneously is them back at work. Like, it's just it works on all those levels. Like, there's this really fun kind of satirical, like stabbing at the concept of like office life that's going on here, that's really funny because it's so weird and unsettling, and like the concept of mandatory fun and incentives and stuff like that. The movie is, or the television show is being so pointed and specific with that stuff. And then, yeah, it's just an incredibly engrossing drama on top of all
Yeah.
that. I don't know, like, it really cemented it, this rewatch, that just like everything this thing is doing, it's doing it at 11, and
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing I would say to pitch it, is just like it's just totally tight. Like, everything,
Yeah.
performances, direction, script writing, character, it's all dialed in.
Hmm.
Just to keep riffing on what you were saying about kind of the satire aspect of it, which, by the way, I expected to be a bigger part of the show going into it, because for some reason I was like, yeah, it's gonna be basically a satire of office life, and it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
I'd say that's like 10 to 20% of kind of what the show is. It's
Yeah.
mostly, and it depends on what you want to sweep under the umbrella of office satire, because I was really fascinated specifically with all the stuff they're doing with, um broadly speaking, Kier, the
Hmm.
cult like founder of this company, or the cult leader like founder of this company, and his dynasty, and That is sort of the office satire thing too, because I have worked for companies where there was this sort of almost worshipfulness of the, executives, especially in situations where you've got like a founder and it's like, the company wouldn't exist without the vision of our great leader type of rhetoric. And
Yeah. I
but yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I once went on a tour with my uh, business organization back in college, and we went to the Mary Kay headquarters
Mm.
because they're in Addison, Texas, near where I live. Um, and they like it very much, watching the show reminded me of that, because they have Mary Kay Ash's office, like they left it
Uh-huh.
exactly the way it was when she died. They have not touched her office, and there's this real kind of uncomfortable worship of this woman as like the founder and creator of this whole thing. And yeah, it's so much like this is definitely a thing that exists, and I think this show is like turning it up, making it almost more over the top than reality. But no, this is definitely a thing that exists in real companies.
So that was what I actually enjoyed the most, is that it doesn't limit itself to just being a satire of kind of founder worship.
Hmm.
It extends into being a sort of almost like it was more talking about Scientology or like cults or um, even just in general the kind of weird ways in which we as people almost like need something to venerate,
Yeah.
and then we make our whole, like, kind of revolve our whole lives around it. It's like, because that's what I thought was great, is like, um I forget the characters' names, but forgetting the actors' names too, which is not
I think you're
helpful.
probably talking about Irving, John Turturro's
I'm
character.
talking, yeah, exactly. You read my mind. I was going to talk about Irving, John Turturro's character, and how he's like the true believer of the religion of Kier, right? Like
Hmm.
he's clearly memorized the holy books. He goes to the what is it, the perpetuity wing to worship,
Yeah.
as if it's a religious, and it effectively is, because
Yeah.
when you take the science fiction conceit of it all seriously, like that is what these people have instead of a religion. They have that they know nothing about the outside world.
Yeah.
They so this is what's left to them. I saw that as a kind of a fun and almost poking at the idea of like the things that we worship, even in our day to day, or the things that we find admirable. It's like, well, that's just kind of what you've been given, and we almost need to worship something. I like
Yeah.
that.
I think that is perfectly dramatized with the introduction of Rickon's self-help book
Hmm.
to their world, where they get this new book. They have all they have is the Bible according to Kier, and they get this new book, which another point of hilarious comedy in this thing, like, sounds awful and ridiculous. Like when they read this book, it's fucking hilarious
Yeah,
actually, how shitty this thing is. And Rickon is such a wonderful comedic character in this whole thing, but that it's all they have. And so this becomes their new Bible, right? Like they had the Kier stuff, they weren't feeling satisfied, some new text is introduced to the world, and this becomes their new holy novel, holy text.
yeah.
And I think that perfectly illustrates what you're talking about here, that this, when you have nothing, when you latch onto and deify whatever you can find.
Yeah, because it's not the source of incredible superior wisdom. It's just an alternate view of thinking, and
Yeah.
it's enough to get him to start asking his own questions.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then he says, "Oh, your book, it changed my life. It opened my eyes." And it's like, well, you really just needed a very very slight push in the direction of opening your eyes.
Yeah,
Um,
a very slight push. Because again, the pearls of wisdom in this book, I can't. I'm drawing a blank on what some of them are right now, and I wish I had written them down, because it's just so funny how cliche and shitty this novel is. I'm not like, I guess that's a question for you. Like, I felt like Rickon was a joke of a character, like, the entire time,
uh-huh.
and there's no part of him we're supposed to take seriously. And yet this is his fifth book, so like someone is continuing to publish his stuff. um I don't know, it's very intriguing actually.
Well, that's actually something I was interested in, is the idea of what is this world like, because
Yeah.
one thing I noticed the show doing is it kind of it starts out with this tight circle drawn around the office life, And clearly everything about this is constructed and fake and it's all lies. We understand that as the viewer. And then we very slowly kind of zoom out. And we zoom out to just, okay, what is Mark's home life like? And then maybe,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he has a sister. Okay, he knows this other person. Very, very slowly. And it's like, what do we know about this world? Because
Yeah.
what I kept finding happening while watching is like I would make an assumption that like, well, it's pretty much it's just our world, except there's Severance. And then like another thing would happen, and I'd be like, okay, it's our world, but Severance, and also there's like this Kier family who's incredibly politically powerful and have this people like their boss who she's not even severed, and yet she is like a cultist of
Oh my
um
God.
Miss Cobell is like a cultist of the Kier cult, and it's
Yeah.
almost like she was raised in the Kier cult. Is the way she sort of seems to behave. It's unclear, right? But it's all unclear. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is it kept causing me to ask questions where I'd be like, wait a minute, like what do I really know? Like for all I know, the world outside of this office is really weird and strange, and
Yeah.
it's just that we're barely being shown any of it. The only stuff we're being shown outside of the office is this town, which is, as far as I can remember, like a fake Lumen Industries.
Yeah, I think the name of the town is Kier, because
Yeah,
when John Turturro gets the map of it, it's a map of Kier,
yeah,
and he lives on Kier Road. Like, yeah. I mean, it's you're absolutely right that it reminded me of The Long Walk, the Stephen King book we just finished reading, where
mhm,
like it seems very, very intentional that we are given not a lot of world building about the world itself.
yeah,
Even when we do get to step outside the office, it is a very limited, controlled, and it doesn't feel quite right. Like it always, even when you're outside of the Lumen offices, it's still everything feels off a little bit.
yeah.
And we have no like clear answer for why.
Right. And so yeah, to bring that back to talking about the character of Rickon, like he's a ridiculous sort of comedic, like uh satiric character, but everyone around him is kind of the same, and they kind of support him in that, and they kind of are
Mm-hmm.
also that. Like the people at the dinner party at the beginning are all ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in the last episode, I thought it was funny how it sort of reinforced where the guy, like Mark, goes into the baby's room, finds the baby, and the guy who he's with just like shoulders past him and is like, I found the baby, I found the baby. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, these people all are like really weird and awful. And not, and like, these aren't just normal people. This isn't just a normal world. And I don't know how much of this is just for the sake of comedy and how much of it is like, oh no, we're doing something, this is part of the science fiction of it all. I don't know if I even would care if it did turn out to just be like, yeah, it's just supposed to be funny. You're overthinking it. But I find that it makes the whole thing kind of more, I don't know, interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, interesting and confusing, and I mean, there's so much fun in here. Like, just for this, one thing I'll say here is that like I think the mystery box aspect of the show is the thing that interests me the least.
Hmm.
And I what I mean is not that I don't think it's interesting, like I do, but like there's a whole like fleet of like Reddit TV watchers that have dissected the show to pieces and like have like really like like driven into the details of everything we see and making suppositions and assumptions and kind of have discovered a lot of what they think might be going on in the show, before it's actually revealed to us. And I'm not knocking anyone's desire to do that. Like if that's the way you want to experience the show, like go for it. I have absolutely no interest in doing that with this show. Like I am excited to learn what's going on, but like I am completely fine with the show taking as much time as it wants to reveal that kind of stuff to me because I'm so invested in everything else. I'm so invested in the characters and those character dynamics and how they're relating to each other that the actual box itself, I'm like, yeah, it'll open eventually, and I'll be fine with that. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the drama is always being led by what do these characters want, and then we kind of
Yeah.
throw a narrative curveball at them. So yeah, I mean, just maybe I'm jumping around too much, but I want to talk about one of my favorite moments in the show that really I found extremely poignant and affecting. um, when the other character whose name I don't remember, um,
Dylan?
he says, scrolling frantically, yes,
Is
Dylan.
it Dylan?
Yeah, it's Dylan. When it's like Dylan, Dylan's this. He's likable. He's funny. He's your friend at the office who always has a sarcastic and vulgar quip at hand. He never takes anything seriously. And then they wake him up in his house, and he sees his child for
Mm-hmm.
like 1 second, and it totally changes him as a human being, because he can make up all these stories about who he was and the meaning of what he was doing here, and just live in that ignorance comfortably. But just having that like one bit of knowledge, that one moment of experience, it just ruined it. Like, he can no longer be that guy anymore. He can no longer be the lighthearted silly guy, and it instantly changed him. And I like totally bought that. I was like, that is absolutely what would happen. Like, if you,
Yeah.
like, that's I thought that was such a delightful exploration of this premise. Like, they set up this premise, and it's like, well, what use is a premise if you don't really play with it and poke it and explore it? And that was like a fantastic kind of story payoff for
Yeah.
this premise they'd set up.
And it also, to me, shows, I think it's a great way to, speaking of world building, it is a great way to show kind of how much of a shit show this operation is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, we're to understand that Milchek did this on his own without involving Miss Cobell and anyone else, because he saw Dylan take that little laminated piece of whatever that was depicting something, and like freaked out about it and needed to know where it was immediately right away, right? And so he risked activating this overtime protocol thing, which in actuality was a stupid, dumb, rash decision for him to do, right? Because
Yeah.
this is something that none of our characters knew existed, had never been done on them in the years they had worked here, and then suddenly it changes everything in an instant for them. And so you can see the kind of rash idiocy of that decision, especially because, like, Dylan clearly didn't even know what it was that he was taking. Like, he just took a thing because it looked interesting, and he was really suspicious of these OD people, and so he took it, and we don't even get to see what it is or what it means or what the importance of it is or anything like that. And so it shows that, like, that's one thing I really like about this, between Milchek and Cobell and everything going on. It's like this extremely tight organization that is controlling these people's every lives, but they also, like, continuously fuck up and are kind of shitty at this whole thing too.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's one of the things that makes it feel like this weird cult, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess it gives more depth and, I guess, a kind of humanity to this cult-like organization that the Lumen Company is, where it's not um, it's not a faceless conspiracy. It's a conspiracy that very much has a face, in the form of, I never know whether to call her Cobell or Selvig, but Patricia
Both.
Arquette anyway. Yeah. And then of course her subordinate flunkies, who are all kind of wonderfully evil psychopaths. And then there's we have this phenomenon of the the board, and it's like I can't help but feel like the fun thing we're doing with the idea of the board and this, like, phone call with nobody on the other end of it, is like, this is just another level of, like, some incompetent person trying to manage something outside of their control for reasons they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Just like these people are. Like, I'm probably projecting, but I feel like thematically that's the direction we're headed. um it's all about the theater of control, but there's
Yeah.
actually no control.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I think Miss Cobell becomes, like, the most fascinating character of this entire show, and one of the ones that I still feel like, even on this rewatch, I still don't entirely know what she wants and what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
Because, obviously, you're absolutely right. She's this kind of Kier obsessive in the same way that John Turturro's Irving is. Like, she's, you know, a believer in the faith. You know, we get to meet her as two separate characters in the first episode, and there is this I think moment early in the show where you perhaps kind of assume, oh, maybe she's severed too, right? That she's got her underground personality, and then this other one that meets Audi Mark is completely different, and we quickly learn that that's not the case. And then we have to ask ourselves the question: what the fuck is she doing? Like, why is she introducing herself into this guy's life over and over and over again, and escalating that further and further to the point where she's pretending to be a lactation specialist to his sister to help her through her stuff. And like, it's like you can go with the insidious reasons that, oh, she just wants to keep an eye on Mark, but there's something that is fascinating her about this whole process, that fascinates her about Mark, that fascinates her about this family. And there's parts of it like that I think like she legitimately enjoys doing that stuff. Like when she says, you know, I think when Mark's sister is like, aren't you going to be late to get back to the store? She's like, oh, they can get on without me. I'm having too much fun. I think she's telling the truth there, that she is. And it's such a complex character that like there's no answers here, because, you know, obviously the big reveal that Miss Casey, the I forget what her term is, but like basically the psychologist on the floor, the employed psychologist, is Adam Scott's dead wife, who we thought was dead, and is the reason why he severed in the first place. That's her. And Patricia Arquette keeps putting them together in the same room. And in the last instance of that, I think the second to last episode, she's disappointed that they didn't recognize each other. Like, she was intentionally putting them in contact with each other as much as possible to see if there's some recognition there. And man, it's just like, it fills you with like, what is this girl doing and what does she want? And I don't know. It's and then in the last episode, like, she gets fired, but then she like is instrumental to stopping their whole plan, because she still obviously really loves Kier and really loves Lumen. But like, I don't know. It's just, what a wonderfully intriguing character she is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely assumed for most of the show that this was her job. Like her assignment was, yeah, you're going to manage these people, but then also obviously you've got to surveil them outside of work. This is a complicated, but it's like, no, apparently that was quote unquote extracurricular activities, and like she wasn't supposed to be doing that, which totally changes your perception of all those interactions. But yeah, I mean, and then all these things she does where, you know, she like goes to the guy's funeral and drills a hole into his head. It's like, that wasn't so much like a sanctioned thing as it was just her covering her ass and trying to keep her job. Because her whole identity revolves around her job. I guess that's one thing I would say about her character is she's the example of a person whose whole identity revolves around her job inside and outside of work, as a sort of interesting contrast to the idea of a person who has a work self and a home self.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't really have a home self. Her home self is just an extension of her work self, where she just, you know, pretends to be some. It's not that she lets her hair down. It's that she meticulously crafts a secondary persona. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, it's interesting because she's more than just a villain, right? I think some of the characters are more straightforwardly villains, but she's much more interesting and three-dimensional, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like her kind of mood swings are really fascinating, right? Where like Mark will get in the office with her and she's nice and friendly, and then she's like filled with just absolute rage. And it's really difficult to track. And I think she's and Patricia Arquette does such a great job with this character. Like, I love all the different variations and instances of her mood, but it really sets this feeling of unease we have throughout this whole thing, that we have this character that at any given moment could just be incredibly pissed off and is going to throw something at you. And then we'll be calm and collected the next, you know. Like, I absolutely love the scene when they hit quota at the end of the 8th episode, and like it's just her and Mark in her office, like laughing nonstop. And it's just so awkward. Like she's obviously actually really relieved. He's just kind of buying into it, but it's just so awkward of a sequence. And this is again one of those things that ties in really great to the satire of work life, because it's just like, this is, I don't like you. You're my boss. You're not my friend. I don't like you. I don't like being around you. But here we have to be chummy and chuckle along with each other. And her weirdness is a total part of that. And the same thing with Milchek, like he's just this incredibly uncomfortable dude. Like his presence, like the way the actor plays this character is just, he's incredibly uncomfortable. And then he's forced to do, like, it's time for our dance party. And it's just so weird and wonderful. And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, once again, I think this is a form of what we were talking about earlier, this satire of office life, where you do have these structures of power and hierarchy, and you've got, maybe you've got your manager, maybe you've got HR, maybe you've got other people who are sort of gatekeepers of various functions, and there's a very real like fear and a ton of anxiety that can come along with interactions with these people, even in a situation where they're not literally like your jailer, which is effectively what these people are. But and also the fact that they have to, you have to act like you're having a great time, and they have to act like they're just so happy to see you and so grateful. It's I mean, it's funny because I actually work for like a really small company, so I actually like my boss, but like I definitely remember working for I've worked for bigger companies. I've worked in situations where it was exactly like this, where it's like there's like nervousness all the time, and you're like, oh, you're always having to be like, you're like watch yourself at all times, right, and put forward this facade of like not only competence, but like I'm really enjoying the opportunity to work like a dog for you for minimal pay.
Yeah.
And it's all in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like, and it's great because there's this line of severed and unsevered between these two groups of people, so they could never actually really relate to each other in any kind of real way, because one of them gets to go home at the end of the day and the other doesn't. And so there is this constant wall between them. I think one of my favorite lines is when they do the dance party for Helly for making it to 75%, and she's actually at like 72% or whatever, and Milchek is just like, well, we've all had a rough morning. And her question to him is like, why was your morning rough? And he just doesn't respond, right? And it's because, like, first of all, he can't, because they're hiding so much from them. But it's like this is perfectly depicts the divide and the difference between these two groups of people, and how they can never truly relate or understand each other at all, just because of the nature of this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I thought about this at the time, but it's almost touching for him to be like, I've had a rough morning, and so I'm going to kind of do these people a favor and let them have their dance party, even though they haven't quite earned it. It's like,
But it's such a lame gift.
It is. It's so lame, and like he sucks so bad. Like he's the worst, right? But like the show did give him that little blip of humanity of being like man, it's so like I do wonder, if we get a season 2, if we aren't going to learn more about him as a person, and why he does what he does, because he doesn't actually, I think I called him a psychopath a minute ago, and it's like, well, maybe, but he seems like a true believer is what he seems like. Like he seems like he thinks he's doing this for some really grand reason that justifies all of this. And we don't know what that really adds up to.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, with the Cobell character, we've already kind of seen like, it's not like she has all the answers to everything either, right? So you wonder how much he knows about like does he know what they're doing with the macro data refinement? Like, does he know what macro data refinement is? Probably not. They seem like they've siloed this company so much that everyone only knows what they need to know, and it probably goes way higher than any of the characters we've seen so far about what they're actually doing. Because like we get to see that Christopher Walken, Bert's character's whole department, and we'll talk about the Bert Irving relationship here in a minute, which I absolutely loved. But like we see that they've got like this front facing part of their department, but then this huge, almost never-ending background where machines are just printing things, and we never really get an explanation of like what any of that is or what it's doing. But like we do know it's like building to something, because Milchick says to something to the effect of, is like, "Are we going to make it on time?" Like there's so much going on here, and it's by design segmented and siloed from each other that nobody really knows anything at all. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's very easy to hate Milchick, and he's like sitting in this middle management place where it's middle management is like the easiest ones to hate, because they get it from below and from above.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he doesn't. I bet he barely knows what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess since you just mentioned the idea of not knowing what's going on, I did want to see if you had any theories. And I know you just said like, hey, you're not in for the 1,000 comment Reddit threads, but
Yeah.
like I do think that's one of the fun things about watching a show like this is you do ask questions and you think of things. And I also haven't looked at any of these theory pages or anything.
Yeah, and that's the weird part about the show with me, man, is I honestly haven't thought about it too much. Like I have not actually sat down and like thought, okay, let's construct a theory of what I think is going on here. Like for whatever reason, I'm just not that interested in doing that with the show. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong to want to do that, but like you asked that question, and I'm like sitting back here like racking my brain. Can I quickly come up with some sort of overarching theory about what this company is and what it's doing? And I got nothing. I honestly do. I got nothing.
Yeah. In terms of overarching, I also kind of got nothing. Well, it's like there are certain shapes of things that I can gesture at. Like why is Severance so important to them? Like obviously it's more than just this little experiment with this office. It's this
Yeah.
idea of you're going to make this almost a thing that is throughout all of society.
Yeah, we
Everyone's
see that
gonna
with the idea of the woman severing herself so she doesn't have to experience
right.
pregnancy and childbirth. Just wild.
Yeah. And it's almost like you're going to create a whole sort of underclass or slave class, which is actually just your own innie. um,
Uh-huh.
and you live it's like a Morlocks and Illinois thing, except the Morlocks and the Illinois are the same people. It's just you're the Illinois when you're outside, and then you're the Morlock who goes literally underground and works to do some weird bullshit. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
But then
like
we have
that.
this really interesting wrinkle with the Miss Casey character, the Gemma character, who, is obviously a severed individual, but like doesn't get to go home.
Yeah.
Like she exists only in her severed state, and is I guess the assumption is unconscious when she's not activated. And so the question is like, why that? Why there?
Or
Why do it that way?
I mean, that is one assumption, or like she's just somebody else doing something else the rest of the time. Like we, I mean, that to me is the biggest mystery, because it's like, did they arrange her like did they have her fake her own death, or
Yeah.
did they fake her death rather, or like did she actually die? And this is some kind of like a gesture at an even more advanced kind of sci-fi thing where it's like
Hmm.
this is a new person or this is a clone. I did think it was really interesting how they retrieved PD's chip. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see another PD show up, because
Sure. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the idea that your brain chip is going to sort of allow somebody to copy you, not entirely shocking science fiction idea at this
Hmm.
point. In fact, the only reason I'd be disappointed to see it is I'd be like, yeah, it's kind of what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, do you think? I guess that one of the questions about theory wise, what macro data refinement is actually doing. Um, like I think one popular interpretation is nothing. Right? They're not actually doing anything. This is all part of an experiment. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my theory with that is like, okay, so like the idea that a number is going to be scary or whatever, the only way that can really happen in any kind of sensible scientific way is if it's like you see the number and then the chip in your brain makes you feel fear.
Yeah.
And so it's essentially obtaining some kind of calibration between like what sorts of stimuli from the chip or whatever are going to be inducing what kinds of reactions in the severed. And so it's more about the data is actually data on like their own brain and its connectivity, and
Mm-hmm.
which is like helping refine the map of their brain so they can be, I don't know, copied or something. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
to
interesting.
refine the severance process in some regard,
No, I
because
like that. I
it
like that.
also seems like they haven't quite perfected severance yet. Like it seems like not
Yeah, I mean,
necessarily always successful. Yeah.
we see that I think one thing, I think Milchek says it when Gemma and Mark are in the same room again. He's like, well, it means the chip is working, right? So it does seem like they're very early in this process of really refining. I think macro data refinement is a perfect thing there. So I think you're onto something there for sure. That they're still kind of refining this process, and we see that there are flaws in it, right? I mean, like Irving is a great, interesting character that we kind of meet with this constant like dripping of this black goo early in the series that we don't understand at all, and learn later that that is related to the black paint that he is constantly using to paint this one hallway that we don't see until we see Gemma walk down that hallway near the end of the series. So that's another kind of open-ended question of like that seems to be the testing. We know she's heading to the testing floor, and it's like, okay, this means Irving's been there at some point, right?
Right.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it means that his sides are kind of leaking through to each other, since his Audi is constantly painting this hallway again and again and again and again.
Yeah. That I really love that. I love the idea that the vision of the testing floor is seeping through to his Audi, and the vision of his obsession with the testing floor is seeping through to his innie.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Irving, innie Irving, doesn't seem to actually remember the testing floor, or
No.
if he does, he hasn't
Yeah.
mentioned it. So it's like there's like a, that's one thing that I thought of is like, well, there's no reason to think that when you sever somebody, you only sever them once. Like
Yeah.
you could have a third persona.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You could have any number of personas. All it is that you've split the memories into different bins based on something.
Mm-hmm.
So
And man, I think this is a great way to transition to talking about the Irving character a bit, because I really love him. I mean, first of all, John Turturro is an amazing actor, and his performance is just exemplary here. But this is a guy who we've seen, like, he's introduced to us. We meet him as the office stickler, right? He's the one that is the by the book guy that is going to follow every rule every time, constantly. I think that my favorite kind of introduction to him as a character is when Mark, after PD is gone, takes all the pictures off their desks and hides them. And he's like, Mark, I printed out the section of the rule book that says you're not supposed to remove the picture until the new picture has been taken. And it's just some arbitrary, stupid rule that doesn't matter. But Irving is a by the book type of guy. And then we see that get kind of completely upended and shattered over the course of the season, predicated on his growing relationship with Bert, and the things in him that unlocks, which I think is really, really remarkably done. And then the reveal at the end with Irving is that he, the Kier obsessed um, rule stickler, is actually investigating Kier and the severance process, and he's doing his Audi is doing some sort of investigation of this whole thing.
yeah.
And we don't really know the full scope of that, but I love the irony of this idea that like he's the one that at the beginning was like the most rule following person, and his Audi is the one trying to investigate it and bring it down. And so we actually unknowingly are seeing Irving move closer towards the person he is on the outside.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe the fact that he's a stickler and a rule follower has more to do with the fact that he's like a military guy than
Yeah.
which but he's,
Or at least the son of a military guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I was unclear. Yeah, it wasn't. He's definitely the son of a military guy, and then I was like, well, wait a minute, is he? Yeah. Anyway, I wasn't totally clear.
Yeah, we don't. We don't know. Like he could be for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That I agree. Amazing character, amazing performance. I love everything about the last episode, just overall.
Oh, so good.
Such a good season finale where it's just everything you want out of a season finale of a television show, where it's like you've carefully built up to this moment. Um, and then in just this perfectly tense episode, we follow these really four different threads of extraordinarily escalating tension where you set out like and it's so fun because in the beginning you're trying to figure out like, okay, what is the situation that they've all fallen into, and they're trying to puzzle it out too. So you're watching Irving, explore his apartment, you're watching her like have these conversations, and then you realize like, she's one of
She's an
them.
Egan. Yeah,
She's
yeah,
an Egan.
that's so great.
um, and yeah, just like it's such a fun kind of tension. It's just so well done.
I agree with you. I mean, this is a show that I think one of the greatest things it does is the pilot is exemplary. It is a great first episode of television, and pilots are so hard to do well. And this one nails it. And the season finale is just a wonderful episode as well. We're doing this thing in prestige TV lately, where like every time we get to the season finale, because the idea of episodes of television have to be a certain length, because we've kind of tossed that away in the world of streaming, that everyone's like, oh, well, the finale has to be an hour and a half because it's the finale. And this is a show that does the opposite of that, actually. This is the shortest episode of the show. The finale is 45 minutes long, and it's 45 incredibly tense minutes from the second the episode starts. We just are go nonstop until the very end of it. And it's propulsive. It's wonderful. The cutting back and forth between all these four people as they struggle with their own different storyline and things, the tension of it. Like, my God. And I know this is intentional, but like when Mark's trying to get his sister into that room to like tell her what's going on there, and like every time he tries, there's like another thing distracting them, and you're just like looking at the screen going, come on, hurry. It's really, really, really great. All of it. It just compounds on itself, and wonderful finale, like wonderful. And it is a thing that like recognizes that through 8 we get all the kind of specific character work we're going to need, and then it's 9 that is just executing on that. Like the finale is just execution on everything that all the episodes before have built, and I think that's the way to do a finale, really. I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Just the whole show building up this like spring-loaded tension, and then releasing it all in that final episode. And I guess I was just wanted to remark at how invested I was by that point. Like the him realizing that Miss Casey is his Audie's dead wife, and running to tell his sister, and you're like, I was like so desperate for him to make it, and it's like, wow, what she's alive. It's like it's like, God, what a fantastic moment, where I can't remember the last time I was that like physically like, please say it, and it's rare that storytelling gets to me, but like that's that's like why you and I love to talk about it, is for moments like that.
Oh yeah, no, you're so right. It's a great ending, and like I don't like, we haven't talked about it much, but I like Heliar's whole thing was really wonderful too. I think one of the things that's great about it is when the show is kind of 10 steps ahead of you with some of the stuff, where like I have this very distinct memory of the first time I watched the show, of going with this character and being like, don't they vet these people before they pick them for Severance? Like, isn't this the type of person who is clearly not going to go with the flow, is clearly always going to be pushing against the rules and pushing against everything? The person that's going to pick the what kind of jazz was it that she picked, that I
Defiant
found?
jazz.
Defiant jazz, that like is going to look at a list of genres of music and pick that. Like, isn't that the exact type of person you don't want in this situation? Why would they pick her? And of course the show's ahead of you with that there's an answer to that question. It's because she's not here for any reason other than to be as a spokesperson for Severance, and that's just who she is as a person on the outside too, is this defiant person that doesn't really follow the rules and is probably very, very used to getting her own way. Because there's moments in this thing where, like, Helly goes like, well, I've submitted my resignation, so I guess I'll be seeing you later. And you, the viewer, are just like, they're not, what? Are you stupid? Like, they're not going to accept that. Are you dumb? And even when she like threatens to chop off her fingers and sends the request in, like, you, the viewer, know there's no way that shit's going to get granted. No way in hell. But she seems to legitimately believe this is it. I'm out of here. I win. And it's just like why would they have this person here? And there's a perfect answer for that whole thing.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I love is, like, Audi Helly is this incredibly driven, stubborn, single-minded person, and she very wrongly thinks she's just going to be able to dominate her innie, but it's like, no, her innie is the same person.
Yeah.
she's just as steadfast and not going to allow this to happen, and so of course she thinks of a clever way to get out of it, and it's just I just thought that was fun. Yeah.
I mean, that's true. And I think that goes back to something you said at the very beginning of this episode, is that this is, at the end of the day, a show exploring the idea of what makes us us. Is it our specific memories? Is it being able to recall those memories, or is it something deeper, something more core to who we are as people? And I think, especially with that character, the show is kind of hinting at and gesturing towards this idea that there is some core personality, some core way of being that will remain even if you strip a person of every single memory they have. That it will still be there somewhere inside. And I think we see it with Mark's character as well. With his he cares deeply about Miss Casey, and he doesn't understand why. He doesn't know that it's his wife, but there's something there. There's something there that he doesn't quite understand. And I don't know. I think that's a really cool thing to explore. The idea of is it the specific memory that makes us, or is it something else? And and I really, really, really want to see this continue to explore that.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like I forget what the questions were in the first episode, but I feel like one of them was something like, is Montana a state or something? And that's not what it was. But the point is, like, they have like world knowledge, they just don't remember their own lives. And so it's like if you don't have your actual experiences, how much does that change who you are? And I think the answer that the show is giving us is like, well, you're not a totally different person, but if you don't, your experiences are kind of what give you the reason why you do the things you do. And so you can actually effectively become a different person. I think, the show chose to go in a direction where the innies all kind of eventually come around and become rebels. But I guess, like you just kind of pointed out, toward the beginning of the show, we didn't know that the Audi Irving was a, sort of investigating the company. But it turns out that, sort of him and his innie are operating at cross purposes, really. And I guess you could say the same thing for Helly. And I just think that's a fun idea, where it's like you're really the same person, you just have had a different set of experiences, and that's really causing you to want opposite things.
Well, I mean, would you say it would be the same thing for Helly? I guess, like, what is Helena Egan trying to do?
Well, I mean, I would say it's the same in the sense that they both want the opposite of what their innie wants. Where,
okay, sure.
Helena wants her innie to be a good little girl and be just a kind of a good role model for the company. And obviously she doesn't understand why, like, her Helena is like this person who's very much influenced by her family, her upbringing, who her father is, the way her father treats her, and like, it's obvious that this is the way that she's going to get respect and standing with her family.
Yeah.
And her innie doesn't have any of these experiences, and so it just leads her to literally be a different person and want different things.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I was just convinced that Bert and Irving were going to know each other outside of work. I was just so convinced.
that was such a heartbreaking moment, right? Where he drives up to the house and Bert is in there with his husband, partner, whatever. And Irving still goes to the house and knocks on the door anyway because he's
Yeah.
just desperate to see him.
Yeah.
I don't like. Okay, let's talk about Christopher Walken a bit here
Yeah.
because I think what he's doing in the show is remarkable. And I was talking to you about this earlier today. I think Christopher Walken has become such a meme, and the Christopher Walken voice has become such a meme that like he doesn't get cast to do actual acting anymore. He gets cast on stuff to do his that SNL character with the Champagne SNL
Yeah.
character that he just does over and over again, and that's all they want him to do. And this show wanted him to act, and it reminded me that Christopher Walken is a fucking hell of an actor, and he acts the shit out of the series. He's like, this is probably some of the best performing he's ever done, and it's great. It's subtle. Like these are two people that have these extremely strong feelings towards each other. They don't really know what to do with them. They're kind of resistant of it at first because it's scary and it's not allowed, and yet they like can't help but be drawn to each other again and again and again. I loved it. I loved it. He's so good in this.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me really, really happy that he's going to be the Emperor in the new Dune movie, because it's like, it's a role that actually calls for that
Yeah,
gravitas and complexity and depth that, like you just said, hasn't really been properly demanded of him in a long time.
yeah,
But yeah, no, in this movie, it's incredible. I was torn between, in the scenes where it's him opposite John Turturro. It's like the air is crackling in the room, right? It's just like, oh my god, the nuance and complexity that's happening between these two actors on their faces. I mean,
yeah.
it's it's just really, I can't think of anything else quite like it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with that. Gosh, and I mean, he gets to be funny too.
Yeah.
Like the the retirement video is so ridiculous. Like, why would you ever do it that way? He's like, why would you ever have the Audi give a retirement speech to everyone?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know any of you and never met you and don't know if I like you, but it was good working with you.
Yeah.
I assume it's just
Yeah, if I saw you on the street, I wouldn't know who you are, but nonetheless, you were special to me,
it's
I
just
think.
ridiculous. Why would you not have the innie make that speech? He's the one that's retiring. Like it just shows you like how little they think of these people as people, in that like they would never think to make any Bert give the retirement speech. They're going to record Audi Bert and be like, "Look, it's your Audi." I mean, like that's the whole thing is predicated on this idea that that the Audi is the person and you aren't, right? Like even the health check stuff is just Miss Casey reading all these things about who your Audi is as a person, all of which are, I mean, I don't know if the show ever comes right out and says this, but just lies, right? It's just none of it's
Uh-huh.
true. It's
Yeah.
just we're just feeding you bullshit to make you feel like, oh, the real version of yourself is having a great life, and that's supposed to comfort you somehow.
One of the notes that jumped out to me is like, I maybe I actually need to go back and listen to the actual line again. But she says something to Irving. She says like, your uh uh your Audi has many, like, sexual relationships with members of the opposite sex,
Yeah,
and Irving reacts to that. And at the time, that was before Bert had come into the picture, and
yeah,
so I think that reaction kind of reads differently on a
yeah.
second viewing.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I caught that too. It just goes to show you how much it's all bullshit. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and like it's really funny too because certainly the company knows that Bert and Irving are, well. I mean, it knows Bert's gay. It might not know that Irving's gay, but like I feel like if they did any kind of research into these people at all, that would be something they're able to tell. Um, and they don't care. They're
Yeah,
just gonna do this.
it's an indication of their lack of actual competency,
Yep,
fundamentally.
yep, yep. And lack of concern or care. I mean, it's just like the way you treat your entry level employees. Basically, it doesn't matter. We don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
We haven't talked much about like the set design and the
Uh-huh.
look of the show, which I think is worth talking about here because it's really wonderful and it adds to a lot of the emotions and feelings we're having here. You know, like this is a place in which it's just endless hallways with a couple of the most bland corporate looking kind of I guess you could say like 70s esque office decoration stuff imaginable. I mean, what did you think of the whole look of this whole thing?
I mean, I loved it so much. This is one of the few things that I actually did look into. And what I read was it was intentionally a mixture of 70s, 80s, and 90s aesthetic,
Okay.
where which sounds about right to me because it's you
Yeah.
can kind of see all that mashed in there. It's like it's this both temporally and spatially dislocated uh, melange of elements where it makes you feel like you're floating and disconnected from everything, right? Because like
Mhm.
there's almost no art, and the art that there is this weird, corporate art that's like this religious worship art for Kier.
Yeah.
um and then all the aesthetics, like you said, are this weird, uh, uh, they give you this weird feeling of timelessness. Like the computers,
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's not like that's literally a computer from the late 80s, early 90s. That doesn't
Uh-huh.
actually look like any computer that ever existed. This is kind of a modern person's idea of what an old computer might have looked like. Um, and everything is kind of like that. It's all it's like it's not quite retro because it's not aiming at a specific time. It's more just like this broad sense of stuff that looks old, but not in a way that you could actually place specifically. And I just love the feeling of it on top of that. Like one thing I wanted to mention at some point in this conversation is, the back rooms, which is the thing that we've talked about. I don't know, somewhere else in our in
Mhm.
our sprawling conversations, the idea that like there's kind of this like urban legend kind of myth thing where it's like the infinite corridors of the back rooms that are that you could just fall into or wander into, and then you're just lost in the back rooms, which are basically this. Like this is a great. This gives the same emotional sort of feeling of sourceless dread and foreboding as the back rooms, where there's just these endless identical hallways.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are no lights. Sometimes there are goats for reasons you don't understand. Um,
And sometimes the lights are like tracking you. Like there are lights, but it's only lit up right under you, and the lights behind you go out as soon as you walk by, and the lights in front of you only come on as you, which is just endlessly creepy. Yeah. It like the episodes of this that Ben Stiller directed, like he loves the walking through corridors thing. Like this is one of the great things I love about the pilot that it spends like 5 minutes following Adam Scott as he like walks from the elevator to the macro data refinement room, and it's just like corridor after like to the point where like I don't know, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but like did he turn enough or did he turn too many times to where he would like just like would that even work anymore like geographically? I don't know, but it's I love it so much.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I think the point was for us to get all twisty and turny to the extent that we
Yeah,
get lost, right? Because I
yeah, yeah.
certainly never recognized anything. Like I have a notoriously bad sense of direction, but I personally was always just lost, like just totally lost all the time. Um, and
Yeah, I don't know how they knew how to get anywhere.
it sold to you the idea that they would actually need to make a map.
Yeah,
That like it was not a ridiculous idea. Like, yeah, PD's working on a map because you actually need a map if you're going to go anywhere other than the place that you go. The one path you take every day to the elevator, because it is literally a labyrinth.
yeah.
It's
Hmm.
intentionally designed as a labyrinth so that people can't find each other easily. Which is
Yeah.
another one of those weird things where it's like, okay, then why allow them to find each other at all? Why not just have them all be in separate like blocks that are not connected to the other departments, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And the answer there has to be either incompetence or intentional design, right?
Yeah, right.
Like one of the things we see that is that like um they're being watched almost constantly, not truly constantly, but like when they're wandering around, Cobell is usually watching them, and so it's like, is this part of the experiment that we're seeing? How like they will interact and stuff. Like we do know that like we see those two different departments start to hang out together, and then I love Milchek's, oops, I printed this artwork at the wrong printer, I'm sorry. And then an opposite version of that same artwork is sent down uh to the
Uh-huh.
design group as well. Like it's just like clear manipulation going on here.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, but to your point, like, why does it take the amount of time it takes for them to get to the point where they're just gonna put a door in front of it, that you can't get out of? Like, it doesn't seem like they care about these people. Why not just make them stay in that room from the
Yeah.
beginning? There's really no answer there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean I don't know if this is rises to the level of a full theory, but it's almost like these corridors are something that they like found, or that
Mhm.
there's like some naturally operative thing happening here that they're taking advantage of. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Could be. Could be. Oh, anything else you wanted to talk about here? I feel like there's so much more, but we've been going for about an hour now.
Yeah, I think I hit all the main stuff that I wanted to talk about with you.
Yeah. I will say a lot of the exterior shots are filmed in upstate New York as well as New Jersey. And man, let me tell you, it was like going down memory lane with some of the stuff. And look at how fucking miserable wintertime upstate New York looks like.
Uh-huh.
I was like, yep, I feel right at home. The building, like I swear, the apartment complex, or I guess the condo complex that Mark lives at. I'm like, yeah, I remember seeing those exact things when I was younger.
Yeah.
And the air of misery is surrounding everything.
Yeah, I guess the miserable environment caused me to remember some images, and I was reminded of the character of Alexa, you know, the woman who Mark dates, and how kind of painful and sad that whole thing is. I guess just the whole, how much of the show we spend watching Mark's just be incredibly depressed and
Yeah.
sad, and what a good actor Adam Scott is something we didn't really talk
Yeah,
much
we didn't
about.
talk about Adam Scott enough. You're right. Let's finish it
Yeah,
off by talking about him and his
yeah,
character,
yeah,
because I agree with you, man. Like I think you were talking about this to me earlier today, that like he's put in this movie with some big wigs of acting,
uh-huh,
and he holds his own. He really does. He does a fantastic job in this, playing these two. Like he's the one that we see as the two separate versions the most, and
yeah,
so he has to simultaneously make these two characters distinct while also not making them too distinct to where we lose sight of the idea that they are essentially the same person.
right. Yeah, it's like the slightest possible change in the performance that is still noticeably consistent,
Yeah, yeah.
to the point where when, especially in the final, in the finale, when you're watching Mark S walk around in the outside, it's like I never for a second forgot that I was watching Mark S and not Mark Scout. I guess I forgot that's his name,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's remarkable. I never, I always love the moment when they show him in the elevator, and it's like he has this kind of slight slouch, and his head is kind of canted ever so slightly to one side, almost like he's caught in the middle of like a shrug of defeat, and his face is just so fucking sad. And then he goes down the elevator, and his posture straightens up ever so slightly, and
Mhm.
his face relaxes, and his head, the tilt goes away, his head is upright, and it's so perfect, and it's so consistent that you're just by it, like it's like a
Yeah,
magic trick where
yeah.
you're like, yeah, that's two people, he's two people. I'm totally sold.
I also really like that they changed the focal length as part
Hmm.
of that process, of the camera. So they just kind of reinforce it by like just changing the scope of the lens a little bit, on you, and it just works to sell the transformation. Really really good stuff. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's phenomenal, and like yeah, like I think perhaps the only part of this series where I felt a little bit of push against believability is the fact that this woman would have gone out on another date with him.
Uh-huh.
Because like after the first date where he gets drunk and yells at some random people, and then the experience with him when she's midwifing for his sister, like I'm just like, no way
Uh-huh.
you're gonna go out with this guy again. And she does. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's a good looking dude. Maybe that's enough. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, or maybe she's an agent. Who knows?
Yeah, or maybe she, like, we actually don't get to know too much about her, right? Maybe
Yeah.
she's kind of as lonely and miserable as he is, and is just as in need of something like this as he seems to be.
Well, she's one of the 3 normal people in the entire world,
True.
which
True.
includes Mark, his sister, and her. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're totally right.
Everyone else is a weirdo, and
Yeah.
it almost makes you suspicious.
Hmm.
Cool.
I think like one of the things the show does really well with him, like, I think one of the central questions that the show needs to answer is, why would someone do this to themselves, right? Like, why would someone split their brain up? Why would someone do this? And like, there's a part of you that just goes, oh yeah, it would actually be really cool if I didn't have to experience that 8 hours of work every day that makes me miserable. But I love the Mark take on this idea, is that it's an escape. That sometimes people dive into certain things, get absorbed in certain project. Like it's the idea of diving into your work to avoid feeling the feelings you have, and
Yeah.
that's kind of exactly what he's doing. You know, he works all day and doesn't have to experience being alive during that part, and then he comes home and he just drowns himself in alcohol, and then goes to bed and does it all over again, and that's his life. And it was very very kind of believable of why this man would make this decision for himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common enough pattern,
Yeah.
even for people who don't have Severance. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally bought that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know where we go from here with the show. You know, everything, if you go look up and read, a second season was greenlit, but there have been all kinds of production issues on the show. I think did Dan Erickson leave the show, one of the original creators? I think he might have.
I don't know.
It's just been production hell on the show, and that was before the writer strike kind of halted everything. And so I don't know when this thing's going to come out, if it will come, like what it's going to look like when it comes out. Will it be the original plan they had, or will it have to change and be much different? I don't know. I'm hopeful. I as you said, like, I wouldn't be absolutely devastated if we never see any more of this, because like I think we got 9 really really solid episodes, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be a little disappointed that we don't get to see where everything heads from here.
Yeah, I think that would be my kind of final comment here is like, to me, that this show does not work primarily as a mystery box show, where I'm
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
like, we had fun talking about the mystery of what's going on with Lumen and everything, but
Yeah.
I like, it's not that I don't care, but like, I care more about the characters, and if
Yeah.
I do feel disappointed, it'll be more disappointment at not seeing the resolution of their character arcs than like, but
Yeah.
what was the chip for? Like, yeah, I don't really care about that. So
Exactly. The things I'm most anxious about seeing is not specific what are the answers to what Lumen is doing, but like what happens to these characters now, right? Like season 1 ends with Dylan getting tackled by Milchek and breaking the overtime protocol thing. Like, what do they do to him from that point on? Like, right? Like
yeah,
what do they do to any of these people? Like, what is going to happen to these characters? Are they going to be allowed to work together? Are they going to split up? And the central core conflict at the center of the show is, if all 4 of these people escape Severance, they cease to exist. They
yeah.
go away. And how to wrestle with that idea, is I don't know. It's really really fascinating.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, that's definitely something that occurred to me while watching the show, and I'm like, wow, how are they going to get out of this one? That is something that
Yeah.
I want to see. You know?
Yeah. Congratulations. You successfully told your Audi that he's miserable, that you're miserable here, and you don't want to work here anymore. And he says, okay, I'll quit. Great.
Yeah,
You're dead now.
yeah. I mean, speaking of the moments of horrible poignancy thrown into what was often a fairly lighthearted show, like when Jesus Christ, Matt, remember a name for 5 seconds. When Irving goes to Bert's what he doesn't even realize is going to be Bert's going away party, and he's just crushed, and
Yeah.
he's like this man is going to die, and
Yeah.
you're like you feel for him so strongly.
Yeah.
I just thought that was yet again and just great storytelling, great exploration of the premise that they set up and the
Mhm.
ideas. Just love that. Yeah.
I also really like the moment where, Helly hangs herself in the
Mhm.
elevator and Mark finds her and then is pushed onto the elevator. And like, the show does such a great job of emphasizing this that the elevator closes and he's like looking at her and terrified that she's not going to make it. And then switches to Audi Mark just casually going about his end of day activities. And then the next time we see him, the elevator door opens and he's instantly back to the frantic, terrified for his friend version of himself, and just
Yeah.
the horror of that just like this these emotions were suspended and immediately return, because I don't know, it's just really
Yeah.
really interesting and horrible.
Yeah. I agree. I love that too.
Mhm. Oh, what a great show! What a great show! I
Yep.
loved it so much.
Yep. If you listen to this whole conversation and you haven't watched it, I'm sorry. Go watch it.
The only problem is it's on Apple TV Plus, which is a service that I don't know how many people actually have.
That's
But
yeah. That's part of the
it's a
reason why it
good
took me so long. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a good service too. Like they do decent stuff. Like they've really built a catalog over the last few years of a lot of things that I've really enjoyed, including this show. So, I mean, I think I watch Apple TV Plus more than I watch Netflix these days.
So, randomly, like the reason why I'm watching it, I guess you could even say, is that my PS5 came with free 6 months of Apple TV, which I didn't even know until yeah, basically it was yet again my mom whose taste drives so much of my TV watching. Was like, why don't we check this? And then I like realized I had 6 months of free Apple TV, so I was like, oh, okay, cool, great. So
Nice.
yeah.
There's a show on there that just came out called Hijack that I've been watching. It has Idris Elba in it, and it's really interesting because it's kind of billed as this. Idris Elba happens to be on a flight that gets hijacked, and he looks like Idris Elba, so you think it's going to be this like, oh, he's going to be this badass that's taken down the hijackers, and in the first two episodes, it's actually exact opposite, where he's like, I just want to get home to my loved ones and
Uh-huh.
I'm a professional negotiator, so I'm just going to help the hijackers get what they want so I can get home. And you're like, huh, okay. And maybe that'll change as it goes through. I've only watched the first two, so maybe that'll change as it goes through the show. But that was just a fascinating little wrinkle.
That's very funny.
The M. Night Shyamalan show Servant is on there that I've recommended a few times on this podcast. Definitely think people should check that out. Not my favorite thing in the world, but if you like M. Night Shyamalan, if you like the style of his filmmaking, I think there's definitely episodes of that are just going to make you go like, shit, man, this is awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of cool stuff on Apple TV Plus.
All right.
Get it.
I'll go check out some
Watch
more of that
Severance.
stuff now
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
have endless amounts of Apple TV for
Well,
free.
not endless. I mean, it does it wears off pretty soon, doesn't it? 6
6 months.
months. How long ago did you buy your
That's
PS5?
that's forever. No, it started when I signed up, which I only just signed
Oh,
up.
okay,
So
okay.
yeah.
You also have to watch
Yeah.
Ted Lasso and tell me if I'm right or wrong about the absurdity of the third season.
Is not just from you. I've heard so many mixed things about this show that I don't feel super compelled to start it. Just to
That's
be
fair. That's fair.
totally honest.
Doof.
All right, Matt. That is it for our discussion on Severance, though. Let's move into some box office fun. So,
Hit me.
oh boy. So we did our summer movie preview, and a lot of what we talked about was like, oh, what is the summer going to look like? Is it going to be successful? Is there going to be a huge movie? What's going to happen? And it's not good, Matt. It's not good at all. So I'll kind of start with the biggest failures here. Number one has to be The Flash, a movie that you and I like. I think we were tentatively excited about. Maybe that's even too strong of a phrase. We were like, oh, I hope it's good, but I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, it's a disaster.
Uh-huh.
It's an absolute disaster. It pulled in $55 million in its first week and dropped 73% into week two, so it was like down to like 15 million. It's a movie that cost them $200 million plus. There's no way it's going to make money. Just an absolute disaster, this movie. And I mean, when anything like this happens, you have people sit back and be like, "Oh, superhero movies are over. It's over." And I don't want to overreact to this because at the same time, the Guardians 3 is the number one movie this summer. It's doing very, very well. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is also doing great. I think it's at 600 million worldwide and climbing. So like superhero movies are doing well, but this thing is an unmitigated disaster. And I've seen a lot of reasons that people are doing that. Like it's because of the star, couldn't really go out on the trail because of their controversies in the past. The Writers Guild is saying it's because none of the late night TV shows were on, so no one could go on those late night TV shows and do interviews. But they have a vested interest in making that argument because they're trying to show the value they're bringing to the studios in order to bring them to the negotiating table. I think the actual explanation for this one, Matt, is the simplest. Is that nobody cares about the Flash at all.
Yeah.
Who like nobody knows who, like the general populace that come to these movies don't know who the Flash is and don't care about who the Flash is. And bringing Michael Keaton's Batman back into the movie, which is what they were really trying to sell in this, is only going to attract a very specific set of people and not enough to do anything.
I mean, yeah, it looks like crap. It just does. The Michael Keaton thing, that was the only thing where I was like, well, that makes like, well, what are they going to do with that? And then they put the, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts in the trailer. And I was like, oh, okay, they're going to do it the stupidest possible way. And then I lost all excitement about the idea that Michael Keaton was going to be in it. And I lost all interest in watching it. Have no interest in watching. It's the kind of thing where when it comes on streaming for free, maybe I'll put it on while I wash the dishes, because that's what I like using that kind of movie for. But I'm not going to go to the theater for that.
That's exactly what I did for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, the Shazam movie that came out earlier this year. My wife was teaching me how to play mahjong because she's been really enjoying playing mahjong lately. So she was, and I put that movie on while she was teaching me, and oof, that's a bad movie. It's really bad.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad I and also nobody else went to see that movie in the theater.
I think audiences are pretty good at knowing what they're going to like and what's going to be good. Like broadly, we're not that dumb. And if something looks bad and doesn't have a solid sort of pitch behind it, then it's like, yeah, I'm not going to see that because it looks bad. And I think that's been the case with a lot of movies. I don't know why this is treated as some kind of esoteric wisdom by like as if it's some big mystery why a movie that looks bad and that nobody wanted to see would do badly. It's like, no, you don't need to reach for explanations. I could have told you that this would do badly.
But Matt, James Gunn said it was the best superhero movie he's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, man. James Gunn. We'll see what James Gunn's able to do with DC.
I mean, he has a vested interest in saying that,
exactly,
of course.
Yeah.
And like that is like one of the arguments for why this movie didn't do good. And the one that I think I buy into the least is this idea that no one cares about this movie because James Gunn, before the movie, basically announced that the entire DCEU was resetting after this movie, and it doesn't matter to the continuity of the storytelling. I don't think that's a reason why people didn't see this movie. Like, I think that's like maybe a handful of people said, oh, well, then I don't need to see it to see what's happening next. Well, then I'm not going to go. I don't think that's like, I think the majority of people going to the movies didn't read James Gunn's press announcement about the future of the DCEU. I just don't think that that's what most people are doing. I don't think that hurt the film at all.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I use this card a lot, but I think that's because it's powerful. Is I go watch a movie with my kids. We watch all the trailers. Later, we talk about the trailers. I say, which of those movies are you excited about seeing? Oh, Barbie. Okay, yeah. Understandable that you would be excited about seeing Barbie as a young girl. Um, you know, maybe they'll say Spider-Man or something.
Mm-hmm.
Something that doesn't surprise you at all to hear them say it because
Yeah.
you had the same reaction because you're all humans and you fundamentally react similarly to a well-pitched story. And you're like, that was a good trailer. That was memorable. I'm going to maybe go see that later. None of them ever mentioned The Flash. I don't even know if they're aware The Flash exists, despite the fact that they've probably seen the trailer like 3 times. It's like, it's so unmemorable. And it's like, well, it's just a bad idea for a story. Like everything that you were complaining about multiverse stories the other week when we talked about Spider-Verse,
Mm-hmm.
everything bad about them was in the trailer for this movie.
Yeah.
And
No,
based
yeah,
on my
you're right.
understanding of the story, it was in the movie as well, of course. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not that the Flash is an interesting character and could be, there was a CW television show about the Flash that ran for like 1,000 seasons.
Uh-huh.
So there's enough interest. I just don't think there's enough interest to spend $200 million to make a movie. And I mean that is a perfect transition to the other film that I wanted to talk to you about that did not do very well. One that just came out this past week actually is the new Indiana Jones film. Came out last weekend and over the long weekend performed not great. It made $60 million in its first week, and I mean we'll see how it performs, going forward. But the thing about this movie, Matt, is they spent over $300 million on it,
Mhm.
and I just like there's just no way that's I mean probably honestly close to the 750 or $800 million mark before you start making profit,
Yeah.
um and that's insane. Like I'm not like it seems like this is a good movie. I've talked to people who have seen it and enjoy it. I have not seen it yet. I know you haven't either. The critical consensus seems to be fairly mixed, but mixed, leaning towards positive. Um, and I don't even think it's necessarily a bad idea to do one final Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford before he can't make movies anymore. But I don't think it's the type of movie you spend $300 million on. I just don't. I think that's too much money to spend on a movie. You're setting yourself up from failure from the beginning, and that's what's happening here. So it's a movie that rakes in $60 million in its first week, which is a good amount of money, but not for the amount they spent on it. And
Yeah.
and here we are again.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been literally like over 5 years that we've been beating this drum
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, hey, if you want your money, you want you to make your money back, just spend less of it
Yeah.
on the movie, and that makes it way easier. And yeah, no, I've heard the same thing you've heard though, that people basically have the reaction of like, yeah, it was pretty good, and it's like, man, for if you wanted to make if you kind of needed to make basically $1 billion, it better be better than yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
Um, so there it is.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't even know if a movie like is capable of making $1 billion anymore. Because like
Uh-huh.
the two best performing movies this year, or this summer at least, are Guardians 2 and Spider-Verse, and they're both sitting at around 650. And so I don't know if those movies have been out for a while now. I don't know if they're going to cross the $1 billion mark. I think the closest we maybe get to it this year is the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I don't know if that's crossed it yet. Let me check real quick.
Yeah. Is it just me, or have movie tickets also gotten way more expensive in the last 5 minutes?
I don't know. I think they're always going up in price, but so Super Mario did cross $1 billion. It's at 1.3
Oh,
right now. So that's damn impressive.
good for
Um,
Nintendo.
yeah, and this is another thing. Speaking of budgets and what the market can sustain, we have to talk about Pixar here, Matt,
Yeah.
because Pixar's newest movie, Elemental, came out a few weeks ago. I think the same week as The Flash, actually, which made it this 1-2 punch of failure that like freaked everyone in the industry out. It opened to 29 million in its first weekend, which is the worst opening for a Pixar movie ever. Um, it is a movie that cost $200 million to make and is going to be a loss on that. And this is the one that really makes me sad. Like this, like The Flash failing. I don't. I mean, whatever. I don't care. Not surprised. Indiana Jones failing again. You guys just spent too much money. But here is a Pixar film, a original Pixar film. And these are the guys that would dominate the industry. This is the summer a Pixar film came out. It was probably going to be number 1 and number 2 at the box office for the summer. It just was. And they clearly don't hold that power anymore.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I know you've seen this movie and you didn't, so you can talk briefly here a bit about, what you didn't like about it. I think the trailers were kind of uninspiring too, but it feels like the era of Pixar as this dominating force is over, because the last few movies have not performed well.
Yeah.
Lightyear was a disaster for them, and so is this movie.
Yeah. Well, I will just, I guess, briefly say I liked it. My kids really liked it. It's just like the movie was never going to make that much money. It's just not that broadly appealing. It's sort of just based on the premise. It's not that broadly appealing. Like it's beautiful. It's a great story. It's like I really got nothing bad to say about it, other than like, if you wanted to make money, you probably should have picked a different story entirely. You know what I mean? It's like a very cynical thing to say, where it's like, you're talking to some like struggling author who can never, make a break. And what you want to say is like, you need to find out what the market wants and write to the market if you actually want to make money. And Pixar, like that's almost like I don't know. The cool thing about Pixar is they've been increasingly sort of like the prestige brand of Disney, where they're not really going to do that. They're going to create something interesting and creative and original that doesn't really address like a just some market that's just starving for content. It's like, oh, this is a beautiful story about the immigrant experience told through the metaphor of magical elemental beings, and it also is basically a romantic comedy, which is an interesting idea, not something I really expected to find in a Pixar movie, but it was fun. Or Luca, where it's like nobody. I love Luca, by the way.
Yeah,
like, I don't know if we ever talked about Luca. I love Luca, but like Luca, like there's no market for Luca. Like it's this isn't a criticism of Luca. This is just like a fact of the world, and it's like you need look no further to explain why these movies aren't doing well than to just say like, well, they're these like authentic, earnest, artistic expressions that nobody asked for. There's just not an audience for that.
So are they being too specific now, and not broadly, like almost by design being specific? Because like Turning Red is a movie I think we both liked. I didn't love, but that's a very specific movie to a very specific kind of experience. And I think it's the same thing with Luca, and it sounds like kind of the same thing with Elemental you're talking about here. I don't know, because I feel like you're absolutely right that in the heyday of Pixar, they could command an audience no matter what they do, and they used that to kind of get leverage over on their corporate overlords, Disney, to say, yeah, we'll make the Toy Stories for you, and we'll make the Cars sequels for you, but we're also going to make these movies for ourselves. We're going to do these things. We're going to take a long, long, long time to break the story. And we have the cachet to do this because we know, and that whenever we release our movie, it's going to be this huge hit and make you tons and tons and tons of money. That's gone now. That's just gone. And I guess the question is, does the market even support a $200 million costing Pixar movie anymore? If these are the type of films they're going to continue to make.
I mean, I would sort of guess no.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But like again, you go through a few of like Soul or The Good Dinosaur. It's like it's like these are good movies that I liked, or Coco. These are all great movies that I really liked, but they're just not like movies where people are going to go out and say, oh, you've got to see that, and like that's.
Yeah.
So I rewatched Toy Story 1 the other day, and it's been a super long time since I watched Toy Story 1. And I was like, wow, this movie is like the best paced movie I've ever seen in my life. It's so sharp. It's so like it doesn't have any fat on it.
Mhm.
It's such an adventure. It's and it's and it has heart, and it tracks the stakes perfectly. It's just a great movie. Everybody's got an arc. It's a great movie. But like importantly, it's like an adventure. You're like excited the whole time, and you leave it and you want to go play with the Woody toy because it was so fun and exciting. And that's a particular kind of product. The product is, you're going to watch our movie and you're going to love it because it's so exciting and fun and well paced, and you're going to have an amazing storytelling experience in that particular way. That's a totally different product than Luca or Soul, right? It's a
Mhm.
totally different like deal you're making with the filmmaker. So it's just
Yeah.
it's more about marketing than about art, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was while you were talking, I was looking up this thing because I saw this thing on Twitter that I thought was really interesting. That there's a variety critic that's basically arguing with the kind of the failure of Indiana Jones, that Disney desperately needs to create something new, quote unquote. Um, and someone responded to this with this idea: over the past 3 years, Disney has theatrically released 7 original films: Elemental, Strange World, Turning Red, Encanto, Luca, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Soul. Guess how many of those made money? None.
Uh-huh.
And that, I mean, that's true, right? Like I guess you have to put like an asterisk on that with Turning Red, with Encanto, and with Luca, and I guess Soul as well, that these were movies that did pretty well on streaming. Like Encanto, I think Encanto was released in the theater, but Encanto really didn't break out until it was available on streaming. And how you calculate, like we've talked long about how you calculate the accounting of that, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, we want to exist in this world in which our big studios are pumping $200 million into original new stories, but like the market doesn't actually agree with that statement. Like people say they want that, but they don't go see the movies. And I'm part of this problem. I haven't gone to see Elemental. I you know I've seen other films that came out. Like I ran out and saw the new Wes Anderson movie as soon as it came out because I loved that movie so much, and I love Wes Anderson, and I was really excited to see that. But I didn't make it a priority to see Elemental. So I'm part of this problem for sure. But yeah, I mean, I just think we're at this place now where I don't know if I'm Pixar, if I'm Disney, and I'm looking at my slate of upcoming films, I'd probably be a little leery about dropping $200 million on these things because
Yeah.
I don't know if that market exists anymore.
I mean, I know we're talking $1995 versus $2023, but I think it's relevant that the budget for Toy Story was $30 million.
Yeah.
The box office was almost $400 million. So when you think about it, the reason why it was a smash hit was because the budget was so low. If the budget
Hmm.
had been $300 million and it made $400 million, that's a loss.
Yeah.
In the way studios do accounting.
Yeah. I mean, and Across the Spider-Verse, a movie that we talked up glowingly a few weeks ago, had some of the best animation we've ever seen. That movie cost $100 million to make,
Yeah.
so it's still a lot of money, but that's half of what Elemental cost.
Uh-huh.
And like I'm torn here because like you thought Elemental was beautiful, and I've seen like the parts of it that I definitely agree with is that the animation looks incredible. It's obvious that Pixar continues to challenge itself with the water effects and the fire effects, and now they're making a movie in which they have to do both of them at the same time.
Right.
And that takes time and that takes money. I get that. And so like there's part of me that says, no, I want you to continue to give this company $200 million because I love seeing what they can pull off. It's fascinating and it's always great to look at. But yeah, I feel like this moment in time is over.
Yeah. I mean, unless we can somehow get the budgets down, I'm moderately hopeful. No, that's not
Yeah.
true. I'm actually very hopeful that automation, just to put it broadly, AI to put it specifically, will bring down the cost of things. And that's not necessarily me saying, "Oh yeah, I hope all the animators get replaced with AI." It's actually like, no, you can just make a person 10 times more productive with AI tooling, or if that's not true yet, that's going to be
Yeah.
true. And productivity literally is just like how much you can get done at a given level of cost. And so
Yeah,
maybe you
yeah,
can bring the cost of making movies way down. I mean, on some level, we know you can. Like, there's no law of physics that says it costs a certain amount of dollars to make a frame of, you know, movie. It's like, no, it's bullshit. Like, we can bring that number down. We
yeah,
can make it easier to make movies. That will lead to an explosion of creativity if movies are just cheaper and you can make more of them and you can explore variety. If it costs $10 million to make a really cool, creative, weird movie, then you don't need to make that much money for the movie to be a success anymore,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I agree, and I think we kind of have long on this show at least talked about like the death of the mid budget film, that like either movies cost 200 to 250 million dollars or movies cost like $2 million, and they really the industry has not been making movies that are in like the 20, the 30, the 40, the $50 million range. And I do wonder if the long term effect of all we're seeing right now is that those films start to become more prevalent, that we know that there's an audience for this stuff, but we have to admit to ourselves that it's just not a big enough audience, that if we require every movie for our studio to release to break $1 billion to be profitable, we just can't operate on that anymore.
yeah,
And so maybe we will see the rise of the mid-budget movie once again, which I think that's good news. I do, for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
The next two movies that Pixar is making, two movies coming out next year, one called Elio, and the other is Inside Out 2.
All right. I mean,
So
people like Inside Out a lot, so hopefully that
I
makes a lot
love
of
that
money.
movie. That's one of my favorite Pixar movies, if not my absolute favorite Pixar movie. But I don't know how I feel about returning to that well. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing to say about the Pixar sequels is usually they've got something fun and interesting to do with it. I don't think
Yeah.
I literally can't think of a Pixar sequel that I thought was just like a complete dud. Like, it's always something
How do you feel
interesting,
about the
and
Cars ones? That's the only ones that could possibly be that way.
I liked them. I thought they were fun.
I don't know if I've ever seen Cars 2. I enjoyed Cars 3. And like I feel like Cars has become like the meme of bad Pixar, but I actually think the first Cars movie was pretty great, actually.
I
Like
don't
that's a
think I don't think any of it's bad. I mean, first of all, it's for children. Second of all,
sure.
it is fun. Like, I've watched all of them. I
Uh-huh.
enjoy them. They hold my attention. They're enjoyable movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the only thing I don't like about the Cars franchise is Larry the Cable Guy, but that's not Pixar's fault
Uh-huh.
that I don't
Yeah.
like Larry the Cable Guy.
That's funny. I never thought about that. Yeah.
All right. I think that was it. The only other thing I wanted to say is we talked about Fast 10 during our summer movie preview, and the one thing we said was that if this series does not perform well internationally, it's sunk. Just an update for you, Matt. 80% of the returns for Fast 10 were from international markets. Only 20% of the money this movie made was here in the US. And it did okay. I think it's at like 500 million worldwide right now, which is not like the billion and a half Fast 7 made, but I think it shows that they'll keep making these things probably.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's good for them.
The Little Mermaid movie did okay. It's not going to be like the huge $1.5 billion thing that the Lion King movie was, but it's doing fine. Seems like people actually liked it, but yeah, that's that. I haven't seen that one either.
I have not seen that either. So
That's Hollywood, man. It's a rough time right now. Nobody knows what's going to happen, and
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. I think like what has happened now is because of this, the entire industry is looking at Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, and Barbie to like save the year. These three movies suddenly became probably the three most important movies that are going to come out for the rest of the summer. And I don't know if the three of them are going to be capable of doing that. I think
yeah.
Mission Impossible is probably going to do pretty good. I don't know if Oppenheimer is going to do that great. I'm not talking any judgment about its quality as a film or Christopher Nolan. I just don't know if it's a film that's going to draw a lot of people. I think Barbie's going to do very well, but probably not well enough to make up for the disaster that these earlier movies are.
I mean, and I think Barbie's performance is going to be harmed by coming out in the same week as Oppenheimer. So,
oh man, you just double feature it. We talked about this.
yeah, I mean, you know, even we are barely crazy enough to even talk about that. Yeah, no, I mean, Barbie's going to do really well. I think. I agree. Oppenheimer is probably not going to do very well, and Mission Impossible, I think, is going to do really well.
Do you think Mission Impossible will break the $1 billion mark?
How well did the last one do?
I don't think it broke $1 billion. I don't think Mission Impossible has ever broken $1 billion.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. There's nothing super special about it. It's not like Maverick where it's like, oh, this is a unique thing. It's like, oh, another Mission Impossible movie, you know.
Yeah, this is the fucking mistake that Hollywood makes, Matt, though. I'm looking at this right now. So Mission Impossible Fallout, the last Mission Impossible movie, made $786 million worldwide.
Uh-huh.
Great, good. Highest the franchise has ever made. The franchise is clearly growing. They spent $178 million on that movie. And so, that's a lot of money, but it's not a ridiculous amount of money. And great. Now we have a lane to some great fast profit. Guess how much money they spent on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1?
$800 million.
Okay, no. But
okay.
$290 million. They spent an extra $120 million on that movie.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I was joking, obviously, but the joke being that they spend all of the money that they expect to make instead of hoping for some profit. It's so weird. I really don't get it,
Yeah.
Because again, we haven't said this in a while, but you basically take the budget figure and you multiply it by 2 to approximately get how much they really spent when all of the marketing and everything is included. And so that number you just said literally almost reaches the amount of total money they'd expect to make, meaning it's almost like they're planning to make barely any money, even in a best case outcome, which is insane.
And we should say that, like, when we're talking box office receipts versus how much the studio actually makes, like, if a movie pulls in $786 million gross, that doesn't all go to the production studio. The theater takes some of that.
Right.
I don't think it's always 50-50, but it's not 100-0, right? So, like, yeah, you double the 290 million, that gets you at 580. So that's 580 gross before you break even, but that's not including the cut that the theater is going to take from that. So it probably has to be closer to $800 million to break even. And look, right, maybe it'll get there. Like, it certainly could. But yeah, like, you're just I don't know, like, I don't know how the money people sit down and go, like, this was a huge hit. Like, why would you not say, let's spend that amount of money again? and if we have an equal size hit, great, we made an equal amount of money. If it's a bigger movie, it's a bigger hit, great, we made more money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
like, the budget between
we're just not as smart as these business people, Scott. We just don't understand how the world works, I guess.
The budget between Rogue Nation and Fallout jumped by $28 million. And that's because the 2 movies before did about the same amount. Ghost Protocol did 690 million. Rogue Nation did 688 million. And so with the next movie, they increased the budget, but just by a little bit. And then this one, they're like, oh, okay.
So our production company, 90 Minute Films, which we've discussed before, that we're going to found any day now. Another stipulation should just be a movie should cost about like $1 million.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that's the money, because we have access to $1 million, so that's how much our movies are going to cost, right?
But never any more than that. No. Like, no matter how much money our movies make, $1 million. That's how much a movie costs.
And like, I mean, like, you have to ask the question though, like, is like, and I think the thing that the money people are saying here is, like, the idea that if we pump an extra $100 million into this movie, we can do 3 more stunts that are absolutely incredible and amazing and bring people to the movie. And that's the bet that they're making, right? That we couldn't have afforded to do those stunts under the earlier budget. And so we have to up the budget to do those things. And I mean, I guess maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't know. I'm obviously not sitting in those meetings and making those decisions, and so we're really just speculating here. But it just seems to me that betting on your movie outclassing the last one by a significant margin is not a good bet.
Exactly. Especially in this market environment.
Yeah. If I were in this industry, my assumption would be that my sequel is probably going to make about the same amount the original one did, or possibly a little less, is what I would assume.
Yeah.
And I would budget my film based on that assumption.
That is some fairly sensible, financially conservative minded advice.
Yeah. I don't know. But hey, I am not a bigwig in the film industry, so what the hell do I know, right?
Yeah. You gotta swing for the fences and make wild, stupid bets if you ever want to get really rich in this country.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that I don't know how this accounting works, Matt. Because if Mission Impossible makes $1.5 billion, all the accounting people and the budget people are going to be like, "See, we put that extra 100 million in, and look what happened." And then it's me sitting in the back of the room, being like, "Okay, but maybe that would happen anyway." Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
How do we
Right.
determine if that specific increase in budget is what led to that increase in revenue?
It's
I
just
don't know.
not. Like, there's not some marginal group of audience members who's like, well, I wasn't going to see it. But then
Yeah.
you had the stunt with the motorcycle. It's like, no, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
But by the way, the movie where Tom Cruise flies fighter jets, which is way cooler than anything that's going to be in Mission Impossible, cost $177 million to make.
Yeah. $100 million less than this movie.
Yeah, right. And it's there's no possible way that you can get to be as cool as flying F-18s. And yeah. Anyway,
I don't know, man. How much of this budget is just the insurance expense for Tom Cruise?
I mean, I don't know, and I don't know how much of the budget is just bullshit anyway, right? Or just like a sort of what's the word, kickback sort of financial structure, where it's basically just a way of enriching people at like is it real? Like, did the movie really cost that much to make, or is this kind of
man? I mean, that's an honest truth, that the accounting of this stuff is so fucky that like these are all estimates anyway. We don't have the hard numbers of how much was actually spent and that kind of thing. It's all like I mean, marketing is a great example, right? Like there's not a reportable public line item for marketing spent per movie. You know, the marketing department at a studio has a expenses that they report on an annual basis that are just marketing expenses. And yeah, if you got down deep enough into the weeds, you would be able to carve out and bucket out, you know, this is for this movie, and that like you'd probably be able to get a number, but that's not a publicly available number. We're just guessing based on trends. So yeah, the honest truth is we have no fucking idea. And it's all game anyway. It's all game accountants are playing.
Yep.
So in conclusion, the industry's fucked to the end.
Yep.
All right, Matt, I think we've been going for way longer than I thought we would, so this seems like a really good place to cut it off for this week. If you have any opinions on Severance, please let us know. We want to hear what your theories are. Maybe some of you folks listening are the Reddit folks that have been really diving into the details. I know I read something once upon a time about colors and how the use of red and blue is really prevalent in this show and what that means. So maybe you have some excellent theories about that. You can reach out to us and let us know. You can find us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia. And also, did you go see The Flash? Are you one of the 6 people that saw it? Did you like it? Was it any good?
Yeah, let us know. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, then we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
You skipped the Stitcher there,
I skipped over Stitcher because Stitcher doesn't exist anymore. And as I said on Kingslingers, so glad that we have hundreds of episodes of backlog where we tell people to go check a place is not going to exist anymore. I'm really glad we did that.
Look, man, how could we predict the future?
Yeah, good point.
If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media, and you can join our council of folks that are able to vote on movies each month. That's actually what next week's episode is going to be. It's going to be our Doof Canon, where our council nominates a film and our patrons vote on it, and then Matt and I take a look at the film and let you folks know what we thought of it. That vote is still ongoing, so we don't have what the movie is going to be, but we'll figure that out early next week, and we'll be back on Thursday for that episode. So that's it. That's everything.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Yep, that is it, everyone. Have a good rest of your week. If you guys go see Indiana Jones, let us know what you thought. I don't know when I'm going to get around to seeing that one.
Yeah, me neither.
But we will see you next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.